If you're already familiar with the harmonic minor scale, the next step is to get familiar with the chords that are available to us just using the notes of that scale. So we're really thinking in this video like harmonic minor is its own key, and it's not. There's no such thing as a key of harmonic minor, but let's just pretend there is. And we're gonna deduce every single chord we're allowed to play, and that way we can make chord progressions that really only consist of those notes. Then we're gonna contrast what we get with that with our normal minor scale and see some of the differences there and some of the cool things we can do as composers to play around with these two ideas of working in harmonic minor and just working in natural minor. So let's start off by figuring out what are the chords of E harmonic minor. Well, the notes were E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D sharp, and E. All I need to do to figure out the chords is, well, let's start on the first note, E, and I'll figure out the first chord by just skipping a note. And every time I do that, well, I skip a note, it takes me to G, I skip another note, it takes me to B. That's an E minor triad. So that means my first chord will be E minor. If I start on the second note, and if I build a triad, I get F sharp, and then I skip a note, it takes me to A, and then if I skip another note, it takes me to C. So that would be an F sharp diminished triad. So my 2 chord would be an F sharp diminished. My 3 chord you can see would be G, B, and D sharp. That's a G augmented triad. My 4 chord would be A minor. My 5 chord would be B major. 6 is C major. 7 is F sharp diminished again. We're just gonna call it a triad for now, but we're gonna talk about the 2 chord and the 7 chord in just a little bit. For right now though, take a look. We've got some really nice chords here. We've got a minor 1, we've got a minor 4, we've got a major 5, and we've got this flat 6, which is a major as well. So just those 4 chords right there are my advice for you to write in harmonic minor. Just take those 4 chords, switch them up, play around with them, and see what you get. If I give it something like a Latin strumming pattern, right? I'll start off on E minor, go to my 4 chord, go to my 6, go to my 5. So that's E minor is the 1, A minor is the 4, C major is the 6, and then B major is the 5. I like ending my chord progressions. I like having that last chord be that 5 chord because we talked in the last video about this being the dominant chord that pulls us back to E minor. So if I need to loop my chord progression, I'm gonna have a lot of success by ending with B major, taking me back to E minor like that, okay? But you don't have to have the last chord be the dominant chord. I could have like the 4 chord be the last chord. So let's listen if I went from my 1 chord, E minor, to my 5 chord right away, then go to the 6 chord for C. Now let's go to the 4 chord for A minor. That'll still resolve, just in a softer fashion. It won't have that real tension to take us back. It's just a softer landing there back to the minor 1 chord. But all those chords right there, I know that every single note in harmonic minor can be found in those chords. So I know if I wanted to sing or play leads or write a lead, I know that harmonic minor would work wonderfully over that entire chord progression right there. So that's my first piece of advice. Use the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6. Play around with those and see what you get. I think the 5 and the 6, there's a lot to explore going back in between those because you have 2 major chords that are just a half step apart. And that's pretty neat if you've got... There's a lot of tension built up in just that little movement right there in the 5 to 6 change. So let's talk about where these diminished chords are going to fit in. When I start on the second note and start skipping, I get the notes F sharp, A, and C, and that's a diminished triad. But it's pretty rare to see these triads all alone. Normally what we do is add another note to them to either make them a half diminished chord or a full diminished chord. Now in this scale, if I skip another note, I can get to E, and that'll give me a half diminished chord. But I also have a half diminished in the E minor scale, so it's not that unique of a chord. However, by adding in this D sharp, it makes it a full diminished chord, and you're not allowed to play a full diminished in E minor, so I find this to be a more fun chord to play in harmonic minor. If I look at the 4 notes of F sharp full diminished, I have F sharp, A, C, and D sharp. And if I build a full diminished chord off of my 7th degree, I get the exact same notes in a different order. So when dealing with these full diminished chords, I like to think of the 2 and the 7 as pretty much the same chord because they're the same notes and they serve the same function. This 2 chord sounds really ugly on its own, right? It's pretty disturbing, but it resolves very well to the 1 chord. All right, do you hear that nice change right there from my 2 to my 1? All right. So this is actually a great jam that I use a lot. It's just going from a diminished 2 to a 1. And it works great to have a lead player play some, salsa harmonic minor piano on top of it, or a lead guitar player. And believe it or not, you can even get away with totally breaking the rules here. And even though this is pure harmonic minor, you could play a pentatonic minor or a natural minor jam on top of that, and you'll still get some really cool, spicy sounding stuff, even though these chords are just strictly in the key of harmonic minor. The diminished chord, though, I have a lot more success following up that diminished chord with the 5 chord, all right? So either of the diminished chords, I'm thinking of it as a 2-5-1 cadence. So here's my 2 chord, here's my 5 chord, and then here's my 1. So this is the kind of thing you'll hear a lot in neoclassical music. It's just a very, very strong, bold cadence, and I will be using that in the composition video that'll follow this up. I'll be trying to slip in a little bit more of that 2-5-1 progression to get some medieval flair out of things. So let's write a quick little chord progression in E harmonic minor. I'll start on my 1 chord, which is E minor, and we'll just arpeggiate that. I'll go straight to my 5 chord, which is B7. And then I'm gonna go to C major, my 6, and then my 4 chord, A minor. Then I'll go back to E minor. I'll go straight to the 6, then to my 2 chord, which is diminished, and then to my 5. So here's my chord progression. I've got 1, 5, 6, 4. Back to the 1, to the 6, to the 2, to the 5, and then back to the 1. Very medievally chord progression. You can hear that harmonic minor flair really seeping through everything we're doing right there. And obviously, as a composer, I might want to accent that by maybe doing this on something like a church organ or over a triplet feel to get kind of that neoclassical Viking metal feel out of it. There's a lot of flavor that's already kind of infused into this harmonic minor writing that, as a composer, you can feel free to amp that flavor up or try to subdue it with what you do. Now, this isn't really what we're supposed to do as musicians. This isn't the stuff we hear a lot. We don't hear a lot of stuff that's strict harmonic minor. What we normally hear is stuff that's natural minor, and then there's just little bits of this harmonic minor stuff in there. For example, if I compare my E minor chords to my E harmonic minor chords, there's a lot of similarities here. I still can play E minor. I can still play E minor, A minor. I can still play a C major. Those are important chords. But in E minor, I'm allowed to play a D natural. I'm allowed to play this D major chord, which is an excellent chord. If I want to stay in harmonic minor, I'm not allowed to play D, and that just stinks. Why? I mean, there's no reason I shouldn't be allowed to play that. I like that chord. I want to do it, especially if I follow it up with a C. It sounds really nice going E minor to D to C, and then with the B7 at the end. So I can think of this Andalusian cadence here. This is just a 1, a 7, a 6, and then this major 5 here. I can think of this as being in the key of E minor. And then that 5 chord is just the dominant 5 chord, and temporarily over this dominant 5 chord, you can think of it as I've shifted into harmonic minor for just a little bit. So take a look at this simple chord progression. What if I was just on E minor to A minor? That's my 4 chord. There's nothing about this chord progression that is making it harmonic minor or that's making it natural minor, because I'm avoiding that whole problem with the 7th. I'm not doing anything that's shoving us into being in harmonic minor or shoving us into being in natural minor, which means that you get to choose. You get to do either or on top of this. And you could really kind of go back and forth to give the listener some, some cool, smoky minor stuff, but also give them that spicier, peppier, feistier harmonic minor stuff on top of something like this. for me, this is pretty important stuff, knowing the difference between minor and harmonic minor, and knowing the effect it gives me as a listener when I'm in full harmonic minor versus just temporarily being in harmonic minor and mainly being in the natural minor scale. So in the next video here, what I'm going to do is take all these concepts and apply them to modern music. Instead of just walking through the theory, we'll actually talk about songwriting in the modern sense. How can I turn this into a rap beat? How can I turn this into an Yngwie Malmsteen neoclassical song? And that should be a pretty fun video, so stay tuned for that. If you like videos like this, please like, subscribe, comment. Please check out my Patreon. You can support me there. And thank you for watching.